I know there are people out there who have personally asked me the question about a pick play. What is a pick play? Why is a pick play relevant? Where does it come into play in polo? Because nobody's really heard of a pick play in polo. No one hears of that terminology usually. But where we do hear about it is in the sport of basketball. And those of you who are college basketball fans, obviously we're in the NCAA championships. Those of you who are like me, I'm a huge NBA fan. We're familiar with what a pick is off the field, away from the polo field. And a pick is simply when a defending player is literally marked by you or someone on your team for a brief moment in time in order to free up one of your players so that they can receive a pass or take off with the ball if they already have possession of it. People don't recognize the pick play has been going on in polo for a long time. I believe, in my personal opinion, Memo Brasida, the master of masters, was the first person that taught his teammates how to do a pick play and what the value of a pick play is. And let me give you a quick example, if I can, on the board of what I'm talking about. Let's start with a knock-in if we can. And I'm going to use this, if that's okay, direction-wise. Let's say that this is our back line, and that this is the goal post here, and this is the goal post here. The rest of the field is this way. And I'm going to knock the ball in from this point, and I'm player X. So up here, my teammates will be X, and the opponents will be O's. I'm playing number 3. My number 2, I want to get the ball to my number 2. But the opposing team knows they don't want my number 2 to get the ball because he's such a good player, he might be able to take the ball down the field and score if I can just get him the ball. So what I want to attempt to do here is stop the opponent that's going to mark my number 2 for a brief moment in time from being able to mark my number 2. So I'm going to just kind of run with this a little bit, and hopefully it makes some sense. Let's assume for a second my number 2 is positioned over here, and I'll put number 2 here. Okay, I'm the number 4. I want to get the ball to my number 2. Let's assume for a second, in a perfect world, as we're all supposedly taught, that this is some variation of what things are supposed to look like from a knock-in, with 2 possible exceptions. The number 3 might be over here, and the number 2 might be over here. But usually the 4 will knock the ball in, usually, not always, and the number 1 will be the forward-most player, as if he was a wide receiver in a football game. He's the one looking for the big pass. He's the player that's potentially going to spread the defense out. But our reason for this discussion is the opposing team is going to try to mark, starting on our mallet side, our offside. Whenever you mark an opposing player, you want to make the opponent play the ball on the near side, and you want to have the ability to play the ball on the offside, if possible. So whenever you're on a set play, you want to try to get on an opponent's offside, so that if you win, the offside's available to you. If he wins, he has to play it on the near side, a more difficult shot. So let's assume, in a perfect world, as you know, the 2 usually marks the 3, the 4 usually marks the 1. In this case, the number 3 that was going to mark my number 2 can't really get inside to be on the mallet side of my number 2 because he's too close to the boards. And ideally, you set it up that way. He's off to the right and he's headed to the boards. So the number 3 that's marking him is going to attempt to do so in this fashion. He's going to have to. And what he's going to attempt to do is, if I try to place this ball anywhere off the back line, okay? Actually, let's make sure my number 1 is here at the 30-yard line. If I try to hit this ball in this direction so that my number 2 can get it, the number 3, unless I put that ball somewhere from here to here, if it makes sense, the number 3, if I put that ball anywhere in this area whatsoever, or even this area, number 3 on the opposing team is going to take possession of that ball. So I don't have very many options here about how do I get the ball to my number 2 and give him the ability to run down the field. I do have some options. I can, because I expect if I can get him possession of the ball, that he has so much talent, he may not need his wide receiver. I'm going to bring my number 1 here. And he's going to start moving here as I approach the ball. I'm the number 4 and I'm approaching the ball. Now, this number 3 is watching 2 things, his man and me. What he doesn't see is coming up from behind him is my number one. And about the time I decide I'm going to hit the ball to this spot right here, okay? I could draw a line. I don't want to get too crazy with lines, but I'm going to hit the ball from here to that point right there. There's only one way that my number two can get that ball before the number three, and you're about to see why. About the time that I hit this ball, the moment that I hit this ball, my number one's been watching me as I approach the ball and watching me as I approach the ball, and as I hit this ball, he's now positioned right there. As that number three, A, turns to the left or B, turns to the right to try to stay with the number two, he immediately runs into my number one. For 3 seconds, 4 seconds maybe, he has to worry about getting away from the number one. The number one might not be the most talented player on the team. He doesn't even want to be in the way anymore. But I accomplished my goal, because now, as this guy moves forward, never seeing this number one coming, he turns to either go to the right or to the left. Boom. All that's done is giving my number two a second or two for his guy to have to check up, go to the left, go to the left, whatever he's got to do to get around that player. And let's assume it's easy. The number one is a beginner player, he's a novice player, she's a novice player. But that 2 seconds means my number two's gone. Timing is everything. As you can see, if my number one would have run over here and positioned himself waiting for me to hit the ball, this number three would have been aware of it, and he would have moved away from it, or she would have moved away from it. Now it's an invaluable play, and my number one and my number two are in the same spot, which means I have a defender that's unmanned and one player down here that has two against it. That's not a good situation. I'm in my half of the field, and I have two of my men with one of their men. Not a good situation. You're better off not trying to pick play if you're not capable of doing it. Under those circumstances, don't try the pick play. Again, if you come in too early, he's aware of it, it won't work. If you come in too late, he's already turned or she's already turned to head in the right direction. You could create danger for yourself by coming in too late. So the timing of a pick play is crucial. And if you want a better description that you can see on a relatively consistent basis, watch the National Basketball Association. Watch some games where you see pick plays in those games, and you see how quick they manifest and how quick they're done. But they accomplish one thing, and that is they take a defender off of an offender for a quick period of time, and now that offender's free to do what he wants to do, to go for a pass or to go to the goal, go to the basket in the case of basketball. But you can actually see it happen watching television and not just in this chalkboard description. Maybe if you'll allow me to, I'll talk about what happens next. What happens next is, it is now the responsibility of this number one, my number one, to stay marked with this number three. Because my man has now escaped. Let's assume my number two has now escaped. And let's say we'll use this as midfield, okay? And this is getting a little high, but let's just, again, we'll call that midfield. But now my number two has escaped with the ball undefended. The number three is chasing him from behind. There's absolutely no way that the number one can get back up here to do anything as it relates to marking the number four. And as well, what will happen with the number four is, because he sees this breakaway, or she sees this breakaway, right here, this player is going to start to move in this direction and try to pick a spot where, okay, where's this player going to go? He or she, actually in a more perfect world, the instant that the number four sees that this pick play has taken place, if they're a good player, the first thing they're going to do is immediately cut to there. So that before the number two gets to the ball, he knows one thing. You have possession here, but depending on what you do and what I do, you may or may not keep possession right here. My number two is going to have to make a decision. Do I go inside? Do I stay outside? And it's going to depend on what this player does. Ideally, if my number two does what I have shown you he will do, this player will come in and immediately turn parallel to what he perceives to be the potential line of the ball and pick a point in time to try to ride that man off and, in theory, hit a back shot, a near side back shot back to the center of the field. I might be getting a little complicated and a little in-depth, and if I am, I apologize. We started with the pick play. and I could go on and on with this, but a pick play, if I can put it in layman's terms, is a 2 to 3 second play where you, if you're setting the pick the perfect moment where a defender who is defending one of the players on your team doesn't know you're coming. You slip in and literally block that person from taking off and or marking your man. And the reason you're doing that is to try to free your man up.